All right, we'll get everybody in. There's Ira and Stacy. Trisha, thanks for joining, guys. Hey, Alan. All right, a few new faces in there. Hey, Aaron. And Jeremy, Edward. That's awesome. Thanks for joining, guys. Good to see you, Alan. So I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off here while folks are joining in. I want to make sure everybody is aware of kind of what SparkLab is and how you guys can participate. So obviously, thank you for joining us. We want this to be super interactive, so please make sure that you put your questions in the chat for us. We'll tackle as many of them as we can as we go through this. For those of you that have not joined SparkLab before, actually, for those of you that might not know who I am, I'm Melissa Langdale. I'm the president and COO of the Mortgage Collaborative. And this is a program that TMC puts on each month, really to talk about innovation. And we spend a lot of time talking about innovation in terms of technology, but it really isn't just about technology. I think of innovation as much bigger and broader. And it's really kind of creating or kind of looking around the corner to what we feel like the market's going, or we feel like a significant need is, and kind of creating and designing something that's differentiating for your company as a result of trying to kind of get around the corner. And so we spend a lot of time talking about technology because it can facilitate some of that, but it's much bigger and broader than that, which is a little bit more of what our topic is going to be about today. Today, we're actually going to talk about inventory and housing supply. We've got some really unique solutions that folks are considering, and so we want to make sure that everybody has some awareness of some of those initiatives. So I am joined by two incredible professionals today. I'm super excited to have the opportunity to be joined by Jim Yokel. Did I say that right? Okay, all right. He's the CEO for the Greater Rochester Association of Realtors, and Mike Pulver, longtime TMC member, friend, but also the SVP and of Genesee Regional Bank, their manager of residential mortgage, and the current, is it the president or the chairman of the New York Mortgage Bank?
It is the president of the New York MBA.
Neat. So lots of, I don't know, brilliant brain power on the call today to help us to hear about some of the things that you guys are working on from an initiative perspective. But let's start out with just kind of telling everybody a little bit about, we'll start off, Mike, with you. Tell us a little about GRB.
Sure. So GRB, so we're a local community bank here in Rochester, New York. We're about $1.2 billion in assets. From a mortgage banking perspective, we have, I believe, about 55 employees. We're 100% retail, do about $350 to $400 million a year. We kind of run more closely to like an IMB within a bank, because a majority of our business does come from realtors and builders and so forth. I've been with the bank now for 10 years, and we're, again, our model is very much a purchase money model. And again, we have been members of TMC now for 7 years.
Love it. And as incoming president of the New York MBA, one of your big initiatives is
increasing the inventory. So that was I actually hosted a convention that Jim was part of that about a month ago, and the theme was increasing inventory. So our whole agenda was really centered around that, and really talking through not only what the problem is, but what are some of the solutions, of which Jim, I know, is going to talk about what we're trying to do here locally.
I love it. Okay, Jim, tell everybody a little bit about the Greater Rochester Association of Realtors.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Jim Yokel. I represent JRAR. We have about 3,000 realtor members in the Rochester region of New York State. We also run an MLS that covers our territory, but is also part of a regional alliance cooperative that covers the western two-thirds of New York State, and that's about 11,000 subscribers. So we have a huge footprint in upstate New York. And we provide support services to realtors, education, licensing support. We run the multiple listing service. We do dispute resolution. And as of today, we have launched the first in our industry AI-powered knowledge base so that our members can get 24/7, 365 support in 25 languages. And I mentioned that because you started with technology, but also the our goal is to be the best at serving our members. And to do that, we need to serve their housing needs, the housing needs of the community, because our members sell houses. And as we look at the market, there are fewer and fewer houses for sale, and that puts stress on our members. So we are very aggressively looking at ways we can be more efficient internally so we can spend more time addressing the housing crisis to provide inventory that feeds what brokers and agents and mortgage bankers do every day.
I love it. So we get a little bit of innovation in technology and innovation in solutions today. That's awesome. I could nerd out on AI all day long, but we will not do that today. I want to talk about inventory and some of the things that you guys are doing. We had a great call prior to this where we talked about the fact that really inventory challenges, this is not something that happened overnight, right? This has been a kind of a consistent kind of theme for quite some time, but it also is really not easy to get out of quickly either, right? I mean, if you think of like the difference or the timeline between when raw land can start to be developed and when a home can actually come out of that, right? A traditional kind of construction project like that is going to take 2 to 3 years, depending on kind of permitting and construction crew timelines and those sort of things. So, there's not really necessarily a quick solution, but you're really leaning into finding some solutions that don't fit that traditional model. And so I'd love to hear you share a little bit about your Reimagine Rock Housing Initiative for everyone. I think it would be really valuable for folks.
Happy to. Reimagine Rock Housing is it's a collaborative effort. We're partnering with the mortgage bankers of Greater Rochester and the Rochester Home Builders Association. And you're exactly right. What we learned when we started, kind of digging into this crisis is it's been building for 20 years in our area since before the recession. And we could talk about, details and stats that support that, but this is a long-term problem that has been growing. And I think it's easy to sort of dismiss every, couple year period and say, well, we're heading into recession. We had a recession. We're recovering from recession. And then there's this, then there's COVID. But the reality is this has been a 20-year decline. And you can't reverse that, excuse me, in a matter of a couple of years. And even if we had broad support from every town to say, we're going to build more new houses, you can't build the kind of housing that we need. In our area, most towns require still a 1 acre lot, and you build a home on a 1 acre lot and you can't sell it for less than $500,000. And that's not the housing we need. We need housing under 250. And so as we dug into this and talked to lots and lots of people in our community, what we realized is we need to be creative to do this. But the good news is there's a lot of creative solutions that are already out there. All the stuff we're doing, none of those are actually really new ideas. They're things that exist somewhere in the country. They're successful. So we spent a lot of time putting together a white paper that sort of summarized these creative ideas. And I've spent the last year talking to anyone who will listen about how can we embrace some of these solutions. And it's finally really taking hold. And we've built this great collaborative with, I think, 20 or more organizations. They're nonprofits, they're business leaders, they're large employers who can't keep employees because there's no housing, they're government officials, there's economic development, and everybody's got the same challenge. So It's been a really interesting year putting this together, and right now we are starting to see the first little shoots of solutions coming up. Working closely with a county in Ontario County, New York, and they're very aggressively trying to solve this and put together a community-wide committee that has advocates for all different types of constituents, and they've got some actions in the works. Applying for grants, finding buildings we can rehab, finding vacant things we can turn into housing. And it's really cool. And the more conversations you have, the more connections you discover, and it becomes a lot easier because where one person has a need, the other person has a solution. And if we can match the need with the solution with the resources, I think we can do this.
So a lot of the things that you're talking about, especially through nonprofits or government agencies, they're more kind of public solutions. Are you seeing any public-private partnerships that are really helping to move the needle too?
Yeah, in some cases, it really depends on the will of the local municipality. The one in Ontario County, working for state grant money, but it needs developers to kind of do the work. There's a program for taking vacant residential or vacant commercial property, turning it into rental property for income qualified residents. So the state can give the money, the county can administer it, but we need actual construction professionals to do the work. So trying to discover as many of those opportunities as possible, see which ones work, and then just get things moving. And that may be 20 or 30 units, but that's a start. And so if we have 10 different solutions and we can get 20 units in each solution, that's a couple hundred units. And now we're having an impact.
That's great. We've seen, some builders partnering with local municipalities through, some grant initiatives or some significant incentives by the municipality to really create something unique in that area that creates affordable housing. So I'm curious, you mentioned a few things when we first started around like vacant properties. I've seen some warehouses. It sounds like there might be some malls too that people are considering renovating into housing. Are you seeing anything other than those two?
I'm seeing a lot of interest in anything seems like a viable idea. We did have a project here where there was a parking area near one of our malls that was dwindling in successfulness. And so they built 180 income qualified independent senior living units. Within, months, they had 500 applicants. Before they even actually opened up applications, they had 500 inquiries for these apartments. So there's a huge need. And what I'm noticing from the towns, that the redevelopment of commercial space is actually maybe an easier path. You have fewer not in my backyard issues because people are used to a lot of activity. There isn't as much traffic issue. So we're exploring that. Condos is an area where we think there is potentially a lot of success to be had. It meets all of the things: smaller scale, maintenance-free living, lower prices, more manageable, great for independent seniors, young professionals. And so those kind of projects relieve the pressure in the kind of typical single family market. Right now, you're seeing active seniors who want to downsize fighting with first time home buyers for the same property because that's all there is. There's a very small pool, and where it really hurts the community is that pushes people down to a lower price segment, a smaller size, a different area where they don't want to be. And that could be into a rural area farther from work. It could be into a apartment rather than owner occupied. And so we need to solve that mismatch.
Yeah. I'm curious though, because I agree with you that commercial it's especially vacant commercial, like it does create some opportunities, but there's levels of challenges there in making that an affordable space, because oftentimes it's everything happens through concrete, right? If you think about like the construction of those, it's done so differently that I'm curious, are they still affordable solutions?
I think they can be. You're 100% right. What I've heard from town supervisors specifically is we have a strip mall or a shopping mall that is not as successful as it was. And they want to make them productive. And they have said, quote, we will throw every incentive we can at you if you can convert that to productive use, including housing. So there's different challenges. You have to get ownership of it. You have to, get some permissions, and there's a lot of construction rehab issues, but it's also something you can do at a bigger scale. A decent size commercial space, you can add more housing than a 5-acre subdivision.
Yeah, makes sense. Mike, I want to pick your brain a little bit too.
Sure.
As you start to really think about kind of things outside of the box, we're really starting to step outside of Fannie and Freddie's box too.
Sure.
And so I want to just kind of pick your brain. What can banks do to help? What are you seeing folks comfortable with in this space?
Sure.
Or are we really only able to have people step into these solutions that have a lot of cash?
Yeah. Great question, Melissa. I think what banks like GRB are willing to do, particularly when the solution is not only going to, assist from an inventory shortage perspective, but also help with some of the affordability issues that we have. We're willing to, commit, a certain part of our balance sheet, if you will, to do what we would call is a portfolio loan, which, that property conversion that Jim talked about might not at this point meet Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae criteria to be sold in the secondary market, but we would be willing to hold a percentage of those loans on our balance sheet. Again, particularly where some of these properties might be constructed, some of them are going to be in areas where we would receive, CRA credit, for them as well. So I think, one of the things that we would do is by working with, Jim, other banks like GRB would come together to say, listen, how do we get this project off the ground? Because we have hundreds, just as one bank, of prospective buyers that are presently shut out of buying, that if we could present them with an affordable solution, they would be they would want to pursue it. The other piece of that too is that what we're doing, Melissa, is, and I mentioned this to you before, is, we were approached by a fairly large builder here in Rochester that, to Jim's point, has migrated to where he's been building homes really nothing less than $400,000. But he wants to develop land and basically build a community of brand new manufactured homes that look and smell like single family homes, but much more affordable homes, because those homes are constructed in a factory and can be done for, half the price. And, when you begin to take a look at some of the manufactured home dealers' websites and see some of those starting prices, you look at those and there's some very nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes, 1,500 square feet, that for the unit or for the home, could be $120,000. I mean, plus you got the lot and so forth, but a very, very affordable solution. And I think we as the industry that's one of many solutions that we need to rebrand, and not only, get acceptance, within the towns where these homes are going to go, but that these are really, attractive, affordable places to live.
Yeah. And if I can piggyback on that, one of the conversations we've started here is definitely manufactured modular housing is a great solution in some cases, but we could extend that further and say, maybe this is a good area to have a factory that builds manufactured modular housing. So now you're creating jobs, you're adding wealth to people who can now have a place to live because they're building those places. And what I find, people are very open when you can solve multiple problems at once. And this is one way to do it. And the kind of traditional stigma against manufactured housing is going away. They're nice homes. They fit the price range. And we're having a conversation with our city. They may be perfect for infill development in the city on 1,200 vacant lots that the city has access to. So there's a lot of good potential outcomes for manufactured housing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think they have come a long ways over the last, 20 years, right? Manufactured homes look and feel very different and can be a great solution in these cases. There are some other solutions out there that I've seen too that actually can scale quickly. They kind of take the builder, realtor, and the traditional kind of builder, realtor, banker, out of the equation. And so, I think those things, are important for us to have some awareness of, knowing that disruption like this may be coming. What kind of advice would you guys give to builders, bankers, realtors? Um, what can they do to prepare? You want to start with that, Jim?
Yeah, I'll
You look
start.
really ready.
I am totally ready. I was at a conference a month or two ago and saw a demonstration from a 3D printing home company who makes these homes out of the vast majority of the material is recycled water bottles. They can design a home in 2 hours. They can print it in less than a day. They can finish it in like 2 weeks and have it on site in like 6 to 8 weeks for under 300,000.
Yeah.
You can't compete with that in some ways. And like you said, no realtor, no builder, they're self-financed, so they can self-finance. So maybe no lender. Those are threats to our part of the industry, even though they're solving the problem. So we have to be open to them as a piece of the solution, because if we wait just for traditional building, we'll never get there. And if we don't start relieving this crisis, we are going to force people to be renters maybe for life. And the gap between wealth for owning and renting is well documented, but it's growing. And with the market in our area and interest rates, it's harder and harder every day for someone to bridge that gap. And if we don't solve this in the next few years, there's a real chance that we flip from a majority owner occupied to majority renter, and then we never come back.
Mike, what do you think?
No, I mean, again, what can we do to try to stay ahead of this and knowing, I mean, I think in some regards, what Jim just outlined, I think it's healthy that this is, occurring, that this type of innovation, to your point, Melissa, is starting to take place to force us to move a little more swiftly on this. And I think just as an aside, I think it's so important that the politicians in each of the areas too, I think they understand the magnitude of the issue, but they really need to help drive this forward as well. But I think what we're doing and what my suggestion is that you really need to begin to get comfortable with these alternative types of housing stock, and then really particularly going back to just as a minute for my role in the MBA is to how do we also then advocate for policy changes, which could include changes that Freddie Mac has to change, HUD, just across the lending spectrum, so that we're in a position from a lending perspective to accommodate these types of transactions that today we just say no to.
Yeah. Right. So I have a bigger, broader question, and this is not something I sent you guys, but I think it would, it's pretty valuable for us to discuss. I mean, if you think about the implications of this kind of disruptor housing, whether that be, kind of a sustainable type of, manufacturing or something of that nature, you can't use those for comps now. Like you're starting to cut out a portion of the marketplace in what can be used for future comparable homes too. So, the impact of overall values in that neighborhood or in that area if you have, you want enough to be able to compare to each other. Right? But if they can't compare to kind of the traditional Fannie and Freddie product, it has a potential of skewing some values, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it does. And I think, there's pros and cons to that. What we'll have to develop is a new way of comping out and comparing properties, because I think that's the only way we get where we need to be is, tiny homes, accessory dwelling units, manufactured housing, 3D printed housing, more condos, all kinds of weird things. I mean, how do you comp a condo that used to be a strip mall? There's just nothing to, so we have to figure that out. But the little bit of everything approach, I think, is also the better long-term approach, because good housing has a 100-year lifespan. And we have to be intentional and aware of what we're building. So we could say, hey, manufactured housing is easy. Let's do 10,000 units in the next 2 years. But now we end up in 10 years, we have a different problem because we didn't build the right housing for the market. We solved the problem, but we created a new one. So we have to be really aware. And I think these new options have a place. We'll figure out how to price them and how to market them and resell them, because there's always a need. But if we don't make it possible for first-time home buyers to start that journey, the whole system falls apart. And we're almost there right now. We are blocking, I think you said earlier, blocking people from becoming owners because of lack of attention, bad planning, lack of foresight, whatever it is. I don't think it was intentional, but that's where we are. So we have to find these new alternative solutions to get people started on that path, building wealth, and then they can be part of the kind of the traditional turnover that we're used to.
Well, traditionally, I mean, in the past, right, you had the generation that was retiring, right, finding smaller homes and finding, they're kind of at the point in their life where they start to downsize, and but they're staying where they're at because it's still very affordable for them to do that, right? And so, I think we're in this unique challenge right now where folks are staying in their homes a lot longer than they have in the past.
Well, I think a big part of this, there's nowhere to go. If you're an empty nester, an independent senior, there is nowhere to go. And the places there are to go are 300, 400, $500,000 townhouses. So if you're in your 70s, do you want to take out a 20, 30-year mortgage to buy a smaller house when you own your home outright? Nobody does that. So they're staying, which is clogging up the market for everybody else. And I think somewhere around a third of 3-bedroom and up homes are owned by empty nesters, many of whom don't want to be there.
Yeah.
There's nowhere for them to go.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I think there's also a lot of layers that builders are having to go through right now. I mean, if you think about labor shortages, construction cost, impact fees, like their world is so impacted by all of those things that even the ones that are really leaning into, I know a builder that is building tiny home communities, right? Like they're really trying to lean into what solutions might be possible. They still have those same level of challenges. And, for a lot of cities, right? And this is why this problem is so complex, right? The builders have challenges. Even if we can manufacture homes in a very kind of non-traditional way and get creative with that solution, now the cities have to figure out, well, now I have higher density. Now, is my water, is my sewer, is my infrastructure for the city going to be able to sustain those type of things? So, I mean, I know y'all's partnership is really unique because you're kind of considering things from all of those angles. How are the cities tackling the challenge with the infrastructure, of trying to think about going to these higher density communities?
It's hard. You're right. A lot of that infrastructure is really old and needs updating anyway. And now if you're adding hundreds of new households, the stress on that gets immense. And we have sections of our area where there's no more power. We have a good sized building project in one of our towns that's been approved, and I think it's been started. And then the utility came and said, we can't provide power to you. We have to order, new transformer equipment that takes 2 years to build once you pay for it. So you can't build homes until you have the power. You can't get the power until you pay for these transformers. Then you wait 2 years. I mean, it's ridiculous what some of the infrastructure challenges are. And again, not that it's anybody's fault, but we are where we are. And so we have to build all this new housing in these constraints. And in New York, where we have a very aggressive push to all electric housing, and the electric grid is not ready. So we have really intense challenges to navigate. But we can't afford to wait any longer either. So it's difficult.
I agree. Well, I believe if you get enough of the right people at the table, you can find some really unique solutions. So I love what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for sharing it with everybody today. I'd love to see what we can do about trying to create opportunities for other folks to be a part of the discussion. So we'll take that offline and see what's possible. If you guys would be interested in being a part of future discussions around this, please send me a note and let me know. Would love to hear your voice and have you a part of that too. Jim and Mike, thank you guys so much for sharing your brilliant brains with us. And I love what you guys are doing, like I said earlier. And for everybody here, thank you for joining us as well. And we'll see you back again here next month. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Melissa.
Bye.
Okay. See ya.